This story does not begin with just a small whisper or a secret rumor that people say to each other. No, it starts with something much more real and solid. It starts with a picture. It starts with a single photograph that was taken many years ago. This picture is a group shot from Northwestern University, which is a big school for college students. The photo shows a group of young people who were part of a student salsa club, where people learn to dance. In the picture, everyone looks very happy. They are smiling and their bodies look relaxed. It is a moment that is frozen in time, captured forever by the camera. Meghan Markle is in this picture. She's standing in the back row with the other students. She looks just like any other normal college student you might see walking around a campus. When you first look at this image, nothing seems strange or weird. It looks completely normal. It feels ordinary, like it is harmless, and just another nice memory from college life. It looks like a scrapbook memory that anyone might have. But there is a tricky thing about photographs. Photographs stay the same forever, but people do not. People grow up and they get older. Photographs do not age the way human beings do. When you take the names of the people in that specific photo and you follow them forward in time to see where they are today, something very strange begins to happen. The classmates who are standing right next to her in the picture did not end up where her story says they should be. If you look at them today, right now, many of them are in their early 50s or even their mid-50s. If you look at their official records, like when they graduated or their career histories or their old profiles in archives, it shows that they were born in the early 1970s. That is a very important detail. That means these people are 8 to 10 years older than the age Meghan Markle says she is. This is the exact spot where the math stops working. The numbers do not add up correctly anymore. For this photo to make sense and be true, Meghan would have to be a freshman or a sophomore, which is a very young student, while being surrounded almost completely by people who were almost 30 years old. It would mean she was a young girl hanging out with a group of grown adults. It was not just one or two older people. Sometimes an older person goes back to school, and that is normal. But in this picture, it wasn't just the occasional older student returning to class. It was the majority of the group. Most of them were much older. In a normal college program for young students, that is not common at all. It is not typical behavior. It is not something that usually happens just by accident or by random chance. So the question we have to ask is not a dramatic one. It is actually a very simple question. How does a 22-year-old student end up constantly surrounded by a group of people who are nearly 10 years older than her? If this was just one single photo, it would be very easy to just shrug your shoulders and ignore it. You could say it doesn't matter. Universities are big places full of many different people on different paths. People transfer schools, people come back to school later in life, and people take breaks from learning. But the problem is that this was not just one single moment. This same thing happens over and over again. The same names show up again and again. If you look at the newsletters from the school that list the former students, they list Meghan Markle right next to the same group of people in many different activities on campus. It happened at different events. It happened in different years, but it was always the same circle of friends. This was not just a short time where their lives crossed paths. It was a sustained closeness. They were close for a long time. The people around her were not just passing through her life. They were her group of peers. They were her friends. They moved through the same school years together at the same time. They went to the same parties and functions. They appeared in the same school records. When you trace these classmates forward to today, to the time when they have class reunions, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. You cannot look away from it. This is not about how old someone looks on the outside. It is about when their lives actually began. Many of these classmates finished high school way back in the late 1980s. Their timelines are set in stone. Their ages are fixed and cannot change. And yet, they are all grouped together around her. At some point, saying it is just a coincidence stops being a good explanation. It stops making sense. The story quietly shifts right here. If Meghan Markle wasn't just standing near older students by accident, but was socially part of their group over a long time, then the question changes. It is no longer, why were they older? The question becomes, why was she there with them? On paper, if you look at the documents, Meghan Markle's biography looks very clean and tidy. It says she graduated from high school in 1999. It says she graduated from Northwestern University in 2003. It lists her birth year as 1981. If you look at these dates all by themselves, the timeline flows smoothly. Nothing looks wrong or out of place. But timelines do not exist all alone in a bubble. They exist next to other timelines. And when you place her timeline next to the timelines of the people she studied with, something has to break, something has to give. Her classmates have high school diplomas that date back nearly 10 years earlier than hers. Their adult lives started much sooner than hers. Yet when they meet her in these photos, they are not her teachers or mentors. They are her equals. They are her peers. That creates a tension or a problem in the story. Either an entire group of older people decided to form a social group around someone who was much, much younger year after year, or the timeline we have been told is squished or compressed. Dates do not argue with you. They do not guess. They do not change themselves to fit a story you want to tell. When many different timelines cross each other and they do not line up, it means someone is not standing in the correct year. And that is where this story truly begins. It does not start with someone accusing her of lying. It starts with a fracture or a crack. It is a moment where the official version of the story no longer sits comfortably on top of the facts that are underneath it. From this point on, every new detail we find will either fix that crack or make it much wider. Once you can see this fracture in the timeline, another layer of the story quietly comes into view. For many years, there have been different birth years floating around for Meghan Markle, different from her official biography. These alternative dates have circulated quietly. They are not shouted from the rooftops, but they are not hidden either. They are just present. They are persistent enough to pop up again and again without ever going away completely. The most common date that people talk about puts her birth in the year 1977. Other records shift it a little bit earlier to 1976. And in some records, it slides back even further to 1975. What is important here is not which one of these dates is exactly correct. What matters is that these dates are all very close to each other. They cluster tightly together. They do not jump wildly across decades. One record doesn't say 1990 and another says 1960. They don't contradict one another. They all point to the exact same conclusion, that she might be several years older than what is officially stated. These dates appear in old programs from events. They appear in school records that don't match. They appear in documents that do not line up cleanly with the shiny, polished biography that came later. None of these dates come from just one single source. None of them stand alone, and that is very important. Usually, false information or lies fall apart because they are too heavy. They fade away. They contradict themselves. They disappear when someone challenges them. But this did not happen here. For nearly 10 years, the same alternative years have continued to surface and come up. They quietly exist right next to the official version. They are not confirmed, but they are never fully erased either. At some point, the fact that they keep coming back becomes a signal. It tells us something. If even one of those earlier dates is true, the meaning is immediate and big. A gap of 4 to 6 years opens up in her life story. This is not a gap in news headlines. It is not a gap in interviews. It is a gap in the public timeline of her life. These would be years before she went to Northwestern. These would be years before she had acting credits in movies or TV. These would be years before a carefully shaped public identity was created, and missing years matter a lot. They matter not because they mean she did something bad or wrong, but because they exist outside the story we have been shown. They are time that is unaccounted for. They are years that do not appear in the official steps from student to actress to duchess. In industries like Hollywood that are built on image and how you look, age is not just a number. Age decides what roles you get. It decides what opportunities come your way. It decides how people see you. It decides if you can be sold as a new star. This is not unusual. It is part of the structure of the business. When a human life becomes a brand or a product, timelines are assets. They are valuable things, and assets are managed carefully. So the question is not why someone might want to squeeze or compress a few years to look younger. The real question is why those years were never fully explained. Because gaps in a story do not accuse someone of a crime, but they do invite attention. They make people look closer. Every public figure or famous person has a past. They have old photos, memories from school, and yearbooks tucked away in libraries or archives. But with Meghan Markle, those memories